Yeah, let's do the Astralis one first then. The problem is, I actually do think this is a team where something needed to change, but I also think if we're going to, in the same way as we're looking at the RMR angle and the sticker money, the problem I have with it is, the reason these moves are so silly though, Maniac, is you don't commit the kind of money they committed, unless you know this is the lineup you're going to stick with. Because think about this, guys. They've done both ends of this equation in a fucked up way. So on the one hand, you've already heard the stories that like Blame F and Device apparently have like very high salaries. So we know that you're spending for your current talent, your current top 20 players, and then you've signed 2 top 20 players at a massive premium. Remember what Richard Lewis said in his reporting, that essentially because of all the shenanigans with Heroic, he says essentially like Astralis got charged the dickhead tax, where it's like, look, we'd let these players go anyway, but fuck it, if you're going to fuck with us, it costs you more. You have to pay, you know, maybe hundreds of thousands extra. So if you've shelled out all that money, guys, in salary paid now and in signings, you can't then, even though they have, after like 1.5 events, be like, yeah, kick the lineup, like, that doesn't work. Like, if you do that, you look like you're a clown in the GMing anyway, because what someone could obviously say, it's a legit question, is, but you gambled that it was going to work. You don't have any, you've made it sound like you've done a very minor addition. Like, I'm going to try this guy from the academy. Oh, it didn't work out, remove him. No. You've signed a giant blockbuster move. These were the star players for Heroic. So my problem is, when you look at the fix doesn't address that many of the issues to me, because the issue I have goes like this, Maniac. At the moment, none of the fixes are a direct on-paper upgrade. As in, here's the problems I saw that team having. Because first of all, you know what? I'll tell you another one of my angles I've come up with from the last few years, but I think it just works, mate. Because these Blast Spring groups and Fall group, because these Blast groups are always after the player breaks, these results are just too wonky, guys. Because we all saw this team beat Vitality and then played Vitality a second time, like close in that like Blast group, and they beat Falcons and smashed them. Like, that made it look like, holy fuck, hey, this is what everyone hoped. That those results, you can just delete those. Those were the outlier. They never did that ever again. And even then, by the way, they weren't consistent in how they did that either. That wasn't like you could see a whole team shaped and people in their roles. People just had a couple of games where the Joker's even down-fragged one of those series boys, and he doesn't do that now. So that was like they just took turns and had the odd game. They never ever did deliver on the potential. So the potential should go like this, Maniac. First of all, IGLing should be decent, because I'm supposed to believe at the time that Blame F wants to do it, and he's done it in the past, and he was decent. I would never say they were good, but he was decent. And the notion of this team was going, he doesn't have to be Glaive, because if the players all frag like you dream of, then he's in more the Carrigan vein, isn't he? He's more like letting the boys play and then doing a few reads here and there, or finding something weird in a demo. Well, first of all, that wasn't there. Like, this team had no T-sides, guys. And in fact, that's where everyone kept complaining about the roles, because you could see on T-side, they just didn't have any of the pieces you needed. Like, in fact, the joke is, even by the end, pieces like Device, a player you would have guaranteed, well, luckily, because of the Opry, he'll be able to get his. He couldn't get his by the end, guys. Even he degraded his level and wasn't the super consistent player. And so, sadly, they didn't have any of the things that they should have had in this team, which was, it should have been an all-star team where they all frag out so hard that the joke is, it's more like the G2 or Huxley. We're actually trying to figure out, like, does Blame F call these games? Is it just Device and fucking, Yabi go kill? Like, it should have been that conversation, but we've never got to that, because aside from Blast, they've just failed right out the gate over and over and over again. And so, sadly to me, the issue is, when I look at the moves they've done, so you take Blame F, not just off IGL. This is why it's so weird to me, mate. You take him out the team completely. Well, that's just weird, because that's actually the player, along with Device, that historically is giving me my most guaranteed production. I know even when he's not IGL, I can get a certain amount of frags in certain situations from him. And then when you change him, you not only take him off IGL, so you could say, if I'm going to complain earlier, he's not that good in IGL. Yes, but if I say he's not that good in IGL, my assumption is you're going to bring in a good IGL, not just make Device the IGL. I mean, the point there is, even if you want to be as generous as possible, I can't even conceive of if he'll be good at the role or not. I mean, I've often said this about Cadian and Jame. I actually think what impresses me in the end, when their teams are successful, is that they can still be pretty good AWPers and IGL. I think that's incredible. Actually, I think that's so weird to have as a style. And then lastly, I'll just say this. You not only taken Blame F off, then made the other IGL even more so, someone we don't know if they'll be good. And obviously it could degrade Device's game even further. And then finally, who did we bring in? We brought in the Bro Guy. Now, I could believe the Bro Guy is here to facilitate other people and to help the Stowns of the world. Yeah, I get that. But the problem is, we've just potentially kneecapped 2 of our most consistent firepower sources. So at the end of it all, do we even have an IGL? Do we even have a functional? Do the roles now even work, is my question. Because I actually feel like the saddest thing is, of all the teams, the difference is they might yet keep the lineups in Falcons and Liquid and make it work. They don't have the choice now in Astralis. They've done this weird angle where they're doing all these things. And the worst thing to me, I'll say finally, is this, Maniac. You're doing it all at once. I'd like these moves one at a time, mate. You know what I mean? Take blame off IGL, see how that works. Megan the bro guy, see how that works with a real IG. You know, doing it all at once, I feel like makes it so you're going to even have a hard time knowing what's working and what isn't. Like, is it device not open anymore? Is device not good enough IGL? Is the bro guy even fitting his role? Should we have kept... You're going to be trying to figure all this out simultaneously. And by the way, with how all the failures they've had as well, I'll tell you what, there's no chance coming right out the gate right now to fail again. In the first line, you're going to have to be good. Wait there one second. I think you're like, oh, there you go. You're back here. Go on.
No, I'm right there with you. I definitely, had I been in the full power, full control, I wouldn't have gone the way about it that they did. I agree that I think there's going to be so many different issues to be addressed and so many fixes to be made at the same time. It's one of these scenarios where you're going to lose your head and you're going to lose track of whatever it is that you need to work on progressively, like step by step. I just wanted to bounce back on the just the blame topic. I also believe that like a lot of people are putting out there the idea that Stone and Baymef cannot play together on the same team because of role clash. I actually disagree with that. Not that they could both have their best case scenario, but I do think that there is a world in which you can have two rifles with the most movement-based positions and resource-based positions. I think City side, very typically on any map, offers two positions with like a whole lot of rotations.
Yes.
Of course, on top of that, you put an AWP in there, and then you're going to be fine. So I personally think that my take is, I think Yabi in his position didn't really have the shoulders to, because I know it was very rough for him. Like you watch the games that Yabi's had. Yeah, of course, he's played all of the shit positions with barely any kind of help, any kind of setup, any kind of pop flash or anything. He was left on his own. So I know that, but you have to have a minimum of productivity if you're going to be put in that position. We knew it was going to be part of the deal. So if you want to bring in Bro, who definitely has an ability to fill. I think he was doing that with Monty pretty well. He was playing sometimes pretty decent positions, sometimes very shadowy positions. That's fine. The way I see it, you just take out Yabi, you bring in Bro, you have a higher floor for the positions that are be definitely ungrateful, and then you still have Blamef as a rifle. The problem is the IGL topic, and this is where you have to sort of make a choice, right? So Device as an IGL, how am I supposed to know what he can do? How are we supposed to know what he can do? Like the fact that he's got an ID for the game. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he has a very good mind for the game. He's been at a very top level for years and years and years and years. But not only was his individual performance not exactly the best towards the end of this stint, and now he's going to have to put in the work as a leader. Like, how is he going to deal with whatever tax this is going to get on his gameplay as well? Because we can definitely argue, hypothesize that it's going to be harder for him individually. Now he's going to be the leader as well. While he gets to be the leader of that, he needs to figure out all of the issues that we just mentioned about Astralis. Of course, not alone. He's got a coaching staff. He's got people with him. But when shit's on fire on the server and you're playing an official, he's going to be the one whose voice is going to have to come through and figure out what the hell is going on. So I personally don't really vibe with the changes they've made. I think it might have just displaced problems rather than actually fixed any. And I don't know how they're going to deal with like the obvious long runway that they're going to have just to improve and just to be better at it. That is, I don't know. I struggle seeing it.
Also, I'll just throw this in there. The other reason I hate doing all these moves at once is, so you've just hired Rogger to be the coach. Give him a go with the fucking lineup. How about let him have a tournament, then let him see what he would change? Like, in this scenario, like, you've almost given him the poison chalice. He's also now coming into a worse lineup potential on paper. And now he has to make it work. Because another thing I'll say is this. I want to touch on the device thing you were going to mention. I'll definitely do a video on this topic. But I'll just briefly make it the point like this. The reason why you and I specifically, Maniac, intently know this is not as simple as, well, he's a great player and he's smart and he likes to think about the game, so make him the IGL. Guys, you do realize if that works for you, then you shouldn't be agreeing with us that NBK shouldn't be the IGL, because that was NBK's selling point the whole time. He was a mega veteran player who'd played with the greatest IGLs ever, was a cerebral player and a secondary caller, and he did like to study the game. So by your logic of why you want Device to be IGL, NBK should be IGL. Like, that's even the reason why it was so hard for his own teammates to battle him. Because if by the logic of sort of like give him the benefit of the doubt, he had all the boxes checked. It's just the problem is it didn't work. And quite frankly, I always thought when he did it, he also tanked his own game and he's someone who could contribute. Well, Device, it's even more so, mate. Like, first of all, when people say all these things like, oh, but he's a really smart player, that's irrelevant. There's plenty of very, very smart players that It doesn't, and also there's a different type of intelligence, guys. Like, for example, the best example I'll give is this. If you want to see like a player who wins clutches in a very intelligent way, Shocks is your man. But I don't think in terms of like as an IGL, he ever made sense as an IGL. So it's a different type of smarts, you see. That's like an intuitive smarts of a one-on-one player. I'd even say a star player when he's in certain, that's different to controlling a team and sending people out and reconnaissance and the conditioning of the opponent and thinking about things your coach told you in a timeout. That's a different skill set. So even though Device is smart, I don't know that it's in this way. Even though Device is someone who likes to study the game for the other AWPers. Yes, but that's a very different type of a battle you're studying there. You're studying timings and duels. When you're watching a demo as a coach or an IGL, you're studying like the defense and what our offense is doing and what our things. This is another skill set again. That's not something he's been doing when he's with Glaive and with Carrigan and all the other players over the years. And then lastly, I'll just throw this out there. Unlike an example like even an NBK, he's not just giving up a role. He's given up arguably one of the hardest star roles in the game. Consistent primary AWPer. Like that means it's almost certainly going to tank some of that for himself because you can't just be watching the crosshair and thinking about it. You're also thinking about the rest of the map. I'd even throw this out there, guys. I have a massive concern that he's just going to AWP way less now because I would imagine so many more times on T side, you can't really be in the position an AWPer's going to be with. You're going to have to be with the pack with an AK. You're going to have to do that to make it work. So you can see. And then lastly, I'll just throw this out there. I'm amazed no one else has come with this angle, mate. Dude, Device to this day still has the same tell when he is tilted as he did when Astralis was there in 2019. He literally punches monitors. You're picking the player that punches monitors when he's angry and you're making him the fucking in-game leader. If you don't get the joke, an in-game leader would have a reason to punch a monitor even in games he wins often. Like, that's temperament, guys. Like, I actually also feel like temperament-wise, I think Device is an amazing star in terms of temperament. Like, he can keep it bottled in and he's not too much of a diva. But I do think he has the star mentality of, like, the point there is, if you're just the sick AWPer, you can punch the screen if you're mad. In a way, I even vibe with it. Oh, fuck, he's so into it. If you're the coach or the IGL and you do that, now I'm a bit worried because the bro guys watching you to learn from you, these other players who are a bit quieter are trying to look to you as like a leader. And in this scenario, that's not leader, that's raging out, isn't it? So the difference is for a star, that's cool. We can accept it. For an IGL, I don't think you can do that. So I'm a bit worried about this one, Maniac. Like, look, I'd love to believe it's possible. Anyone who actually, I do think, like I say, if you're smart, if you study, if you want to take these are all great things, but I think it's a very specialized role. And I don't think that many people make it through the sort of threshold, in my opinion. We all want to believe everyone can do it, but that's actually why I'll even give him props here. That's why actually when Snacks did transform from some guy who made all brilliant individual players into like a fairly competent IGL, I'm impressed by that. I would have again been a naysayer, but in this case for Device, I'd love it to work, but I have kind of a bad vibe about this. Like I've got to tell you straight up, I get the vibe this doesn't even last 6 months, mate. I think in 3 months or someone else is coming in or someone else is taking the role on and he's back to AWP. I think that's what happens, mate.
I share your concerns. I think there's two angles to it. The first one is, and as you pointed out, it is extremely difficult for an AWPer to remain efficient while you have to think about what everything is happening in the round. And you have to make the mid-round calls and you have to micromanage a couple of situations. And at the same time, you have to be the AWPer. Like, extremely complicated to do that. So there's two ways to go about it. One is obviously, if his level tanks a little bit, how is he going to deal with that? Like you mentioned, fusions of emotions here and there, monitor punching, memes and whatever the hell. Okay, so how is he going to deal with his level tanking if his level does tank, which I think is a very probable scenario that we're looking at here. That's one angle. The only way that I can think about this working is if Astralis make now the conscious decision to tailor their playstyle to him. And I feel like this is the only time in the history of Counter-Strike where AWPers and leaders have actually had some kind of success is when the playstyle is literally made for you. Any kind of pre-sequence been put together. I mean, Jamie is obviously the prime example, but Fallen had some years as well where he was extremely strong and he was the main piece of whatever puzzle was going on. Whenever Cadian had success in Heroic, he was obviously very much at the very center of some of these moves. So if Astralis is going to help Device have protocols that are made for him to be activated and be strong within the game, okay, that I can imagine. Now you are going to tell me how everybody else is going to deal with that, because that also means a truck ton of resources being devoted to your AWPers, timings, money, resources, whatever it is. You're going to have to tell me how everybody else handles it. But I feel like it's a rock and a hard place. You either are going to have to retail your entire playstyle to suit Device in order for him to not have a massive drop, or you're going to have to deal with arguably one of the strongest player ever in Counter-Strike, having a massive drop. Like he was supposed to be, he and Blamef, even in the harshest of times of Astralis, were always players we could go to and say, you know what, Blamef and Device, they're going to produce, man, they're out there, 115, 120 rating every single time, online all the time. I can bet my whole house on them, they're going to do fine. That assumption now doesn't work anymore. That assumption is actually a maybe. We don't know how Device is going to play, and we don't know how he's going to be handling it when he's not playing well. And are you telling me he's going to have to remain calm individually, plus he's going to have to keep calm and have lucidity on the calls and what's happening in the game? And I think this is probably one of the areas that intelligent players underestimate the most, is your ability to remain level-headed when you are having a shit game and you are now the IGL and you cannot rely on your guy to the left or your guy to the right, aka your captain, to dig you out of this mess because he knows something that you haven't seen, because it's very famous that just psychologically when you're having a hard time, it's very complicated. You're basically standing too close to the elephant and you cannot really see the game. Now Device is going to have to get himself familiarized with that. Having a harsh, tough game to go through, and at the same time, keeping a cool head, figuring out solutions, having a good level of communication as well, keeping the morale pretty high for the troops. Like, these are all qualities that have nothing to do with being smart in the game. Because Device is smart in the game. He was always one of the smartest AWPer you could study, positioning, angle management, timing. He was always up there. But that has, for me, very little to do with being a captain and handling the ship whenever things go to hell. That's another topic, and he's going to have to prove a whole lot in that.
Also, there's one last thing I forgot to mention, which also no one's brought up. This is why I'll do my own video and summarize all this shit. There's one last detail that I think makes it mega inappropriate, which is, you know what everyone's forgetting, Maniac? They're forgetting a very famous thing about Device from the last 5 or so years. He has that fucking condition where he gets like I don't know if it's like something to do with his intestines or his bowels, if people know, where he has like essentially like pain that he sometimes experiences, and it's supposedly stress related. Bro, you're picking to be the IGL. Like I said before, the joke is like, even an IGL that wins a game and all his star players are high-fiving, yeah, great job. Half the time you're bloody a nervous wreck because like, you know how close it was to going wrong. You walk in the tightrope, as it were. You make a call that, phew, that just worked. I didn't even bloody know if that was, you know what I mean? Your star player wins a 1v1 when he should lose the round, and suddenly you win the game 13-11. Like I say, all your stars stand up and they all go, great game, guys. We'll get him next time. As an IGL, you're like, fucking hell, we shouldn't even have won that one, and we're going to get this next. What are we doing on map 2? Like, it's basically like a stress role. Same with being a coach. So, like, all I'm going to say is Device better not have that issue, because that issue alone quite literally could ruin his fucking life, mate. Like, that sounds really horrible. Because, like I say, that's why I do think it's one of the positions that requires the most mental strength is IGL, because you're going to have to suffer a lot. You have to go through a lot of fucking bullshit.
Yep, I'm right there with you. One of the many reasons why I don't really feel this change, but I guess we'll have to wait. And the only upside for them is that they have a little bit of time now to just work on the play side. They're not going to have to play Counter-Strike for a few weeks. So I don't know. I guess we're going to see them in Pro League. I guess we're going to have to see what kind of phase they show.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.